Hello, and welcome to the IOSH podcast's Trailblazer Talks, a new series recorded at the 2024 Health and Safety events in Birmingham. In this episode, we speak to health, safety and environment specialist and IOSH future leader Fiona Fullerton and Phillip Muston, head of careers at health and safety recruitment firm Shirley Parsons, about maintaining OSH work behaviours in a shifting workforce paradigm.
Hello to both of you. Welcome to the IOSH podcast. How are you both doing?
Yeah, good.
Good, thank you.
Yeah? So you've just both come off the stage, haven't you? You've just done a session on the shifting workforce paradigm. How did that go?
Really good. Some really good topics of conversation, good talking points.
Yeah, I think the best thing was we're all aligned on stage as well. So
That's always good, isn't it? Yeah.
There's no disagreements.
And I saw quite a few hands up at the end, so you got lots of sort of audience engagement and participation.
Yeah, some good questions.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so for our listeners of the podcast and viewers, because they may well be watching us on YouTube, can you just tell us a bit about yourself, Fiona?
So I'm currently HSE Lead at SLB, so we're a technology company. Been in the OSH profession for almost 10 years. Before that, I was working offshore in the oil industry, and I then had come straight from university doing geography and geoscience.
Cool. How about you, Phillip?
Not as glamorous as that, I have to say. I head up our careers division at Shirley Parsons. So Shirley Parsons are a specialist HCQ careers recruitment agency. Have a wider remit, but I've done it for 14 years now. So I'm also health and safety qualified, which I always love telling people as well. So not only can I support them in their career, I actually have an understanding of the industry as well.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, and how did you find that?
what, doing the qualification?
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I was one that when I was quite young, never really studied well in school, and actually later in life doing qualifications, and actually I have a genuine interest in the industry as well, having done it for 14 years. So yeah, it was good. It was good.
And I guess working in recruitment and speaking to, because the OSH demographic is that little bit older.
It is, yeah,
So
traditionally.
the sort of people that you're talking to, you can relate to as well.
Yeah, definitely. And part of the shifting is what's happening with the environment of people entering and how that's changing the industry. So yeah, I'm not young by any means, so I'm kind of in the middle ground of the demographic, but yeah, I think it helps give that credibility.
Yeah. That was a lovely lead-in, Phil, to what we're talking about today. So, Fiona, you mentioned that you studied geography and geoscience at university, and then you moved into OSH about a year after graduating. Is that right?
Yeah.
What attracted you to the profession?
I think we can see that every day is different. We can make a change to people and how we do processes and tasks. And I get to see every single part of the business, so I don't just work, offshore like I did, or maybe in logistics. I get to see everything. I don't just get stuck in one part.
Yeah, that must be really, really interesting. And like you say, not one day is the same as well. And you get you manage to get your teeth into lots of different parts of the organisation, I guess.
Yeah, you plan your day,
Yeah.
and then it is completely different to what you plan.
Yeah.
Because something random and strange that is completely new pops up, but it keeps us interested.
Yeah, definitely. Some people wouldn't deal very well with that. So I guess you have to be the right type of person, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Phil, you've recruited OSH professionals for, like you said, over a decade. Yeah. So you must have seen some changes in the industry, especially in recent years, post-pandemic. Can you give us a bit of an insight into the jobs market?
Yeah, of course. So I think the main change that we mentioned on stage is that what people are looking for now has completely changed. Previously it was how much is it paying, what's it require, I want to see a job description. Actually now a lot of people are asking, what do I get out of this career move? And a lot of people are talking about it as a career step. So it's more about that work flexibility, that we're looking at benefits package. We're looking at everything outside of the salary. And one of the things that I mentioned on the stage is a shameless plug here, but Shirley Parsons today have released their market insight survey, which gives all this data into the background. And actually, but pre-COVID, salary was the biggest drive.
Yeah.
Everyone wasn't happy with salary, always chasing that extra pound. Whereas now a lot of people are looking at themselves, professional development, what does it mean for them, and also what the company stands for in regards to their CSR culture and their overall safety culture. And leadership's big as well, is that how is their style of leadership and how's that going to impact me on a day-by-day basis. So it's really changed to be more about companies is what can you provide me that makes me interested in you as a business. Whereas I've said ever since I did this is that interviews are a two-way. It needs to be right on both sides. Whereas now in the last 4 years, that's become so apparent. Whereas previously people were just happy with what I call a job, whereas now it's about a career. And that's been a huge change since COVID. And I think that COVID has made people realise about themselves a lot more, about what life is about. Previously, people always spoke about work-life balance, and that was effectively, I work my hours and I still want to be able to do something in the evening. Actually, now it's completely different, is that do I have the flexibility? Can I go pick up my kids once a week? I've got 4 children, so flexibility is a big thing for me, and I understand that. So that's the main change, and how people now look from an external recruitment perspective of what they're looking for.
That's really interesting. And it sounds like some of these companies almost need to sell themselves to these candidates, don't they?
And it's part of what we've had to change with that.
Yeah.
Is that previously we would focus on preparing our candidates for interview, but now actually we coach our clients on interviews.
How interesting.
Yeah, and we take it for granted, and I think everyone in the sector takes it for granted in every industry, is that you assume because someone is a hiring manager, they've hired before. A lot of people have interviewed, but they may not have been on the other side of the table interviewing someone. That actually some people need coaching and support, and appreciate how they come across during that process can impact a candidate making a decision. So actually how we can support the clients in doing that.
And whether they win that talent.
Yeah. It's the same as trying to win business and winning people. It's what's in it for me has changed a lot for people.
COVID understandably hit the recruitment industry hard. Obviously, there's been some benefits to it, like you just alluded to. But do you think the recruitment industry is going to bounce back, or is it beginning to?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be need for our industry. I think where the industry suffered was where I think everyone suffered. I think that there was that whole country just batten down the hatches and let's see what this means. So everyone was very cautious. So what that meant was people weren't moving, companies weren't hiring, and that obviously is going to impact us because that's our main area. But I think that what we've seen since COVID is it's identified a lot of areas for companies to diversify, develop, and doing health and safety. We were actually still quite busy during COVID because how suddenly you had all the COVID testers that came under more responsibility of health and safety professionals.
Well, it's the right industry, wasn't it? Yeah,
exactly. And you had a lot of health and safety professionals that went, my job has doubled in the last day, and how they looked at supporting that. So I would say as an industry, it's definitely returning. It's more of a candidate-driven market, and I think the way the candidate perspective has changed is how we see that candidates now have more choice, and they are not just accepting something for what it says and actually want to dig deeper. So I think from that perspective, I'd say that the health and safety market was always very busy, even during COVID. But I think from the candidate perspective, we're now seeing more candidates are open to change, which we haven't seen in the last 18 months.
Yeah. And how do you think hybrid work has changed that?
I think it's now a key thing that people want. And I think that what we're seeing is businesses that don't offer that are struggling to attract talent. And companies that do, I said on stage that I specialise in construction infrastructure, is that they were one of the industries that always said, you have to be on site. 8 till 6, you have to be there. Whereas actually COVID made them change. And that's where we've now seen more people keen to go into that industry and more people stay in that industry, because we had quite a lot of people prior to COVID that would go into construction and want to come out because of the lack of flexibility and the restraints that caused. So I think that that's a positive part of COVID coming out, and how we've seen motivations change in people, especially on the flexible working. It's now as I said on stage, is that we, in part of Shirley Parsons' Insights report, which is downloadable from our website, it has in there about the motivations around flexibility being one of the areas that people are the most happy about or the most unhappy about. It's the big divide, and so that's a real key thing for people.
And so Fiona, from your perspective as an OSH professional, how has hybrid work impacted you looking after workforces?
I think at the start it made it very difficult, because it was something that we'd never done before. Everyone was always at a desk on one of our sites. And now you're going from everyone in to everyone who works in an office being at home, especially in the first few lockdowns. And it's trying to think, how do we look at ergonomic risks? How are people sitting? Because some people went home with nothing and sat at their dinner table on a stool or a wooden chair because
A lot of
they
people
had
still do
nothing.
that, yeah.
So that makes it very difficult. But also when we come back to the office, how do we have first aiders and fire wardens? Because some of them aren't in 5 days a week. They maybe do fixed 3 days.
That's
or
a good
they're
point.
a hybrid 3 days. 1 week is Monday, Wednesday, and the next week is Thursday, Friday. So how do you then plan who your emergency response team are is one of the biggest challenges.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. So, Philip, what are the key trends that you're seeing in recruitment this year?
In regards to health and safety,
Yeah.
I'd say the key trends of what I've already mentioned is actually candidates wanting to know what the company are offering more so, rather than what you do, if that makes sense. So people traditionally will know what a health and safety professional does, but actually what are they offering alongside that? So we talk about package, work-life balance, flexibility. I mentioned volunteering days on the stage. Is so much has become about the detail that people want, and that's a trend that has changed a lot in the last 3 to 4 years. Is people want that detail. No longer is it, oh, health and safety advisor, London, paying 50k, yeah, fine. It's now, okay, what does that mean? How many days am I in the office? Where are the sites? What's the package? Does it come with a travel allowance? Now everything is based around the wider view rather than that. No longer can you call up a candidate and say, I've got a health and safety manager, London, 50k, and then you go, fine, good. It's everything is now the detail.
It's everything that comes with it. So thinking about the perception of health and safety, now we all know that it's not been the best in recent years. As a journalist myself, if somebody asks me, say at a dinner party, what do you do for a living? And I say, oh, I'm a magazine editor. Oh, for what magazine? Thinking it's going to be like Cosmopolitan or something like that. And I'm like, an employment law magazine or something, because I'm not ashamed, but people don't get it, do they? And they don't realise health and safety has this reputation as being somebody that tells people that they can't do that, or we need to risk assess that, or we've got to check that box. So Fiona, from your perspective, how do you think the perception of health and safety has changed in recent years? And I guess from COVID, because they were so integral during that time.
I think it's still mixed, and as we spoke about on stage, it's a generational thing. We still have pockets of the generation that think, as you said, we're like police officers that say, yes, you can do that, or no, you can't.
Exactly.
And you still see on social media and the press, oh, we haven't been able to do that, and they use the excuse of health and safety. And I think for it to continue to move, I think we need to quash that and get rid of that perception. I think it's definitely changing. I think the younger generation see why we're here and why we're there to keep them safe and how we can keep them safe, especially now with the discussion on well-being and mental health. But it's still a daily task to quash that.
Yeah, every single client and candidate I speak to says the exact same thing, is everyone wants the someone who is engaging, not a police officer. But there are still professionals who bring the industry back, and actually health and safety is seen as enablers. It's about being able to do the job better, more efficiently, not just stop what you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But there are people in the industry that bring it back to the 70s, 80s for sure.
I think it's both sides. It's the workers that we're there to support that have that misconception of us, but there's also us as professionals that some of us are still clipboard, sit behind a desk, and that's the role rather than actually getting out and speaking to those that we're supporting.
That's an interesting point about actually the workforce and getting them on side, I guess. But also with the boards, sort of in terms of investment and costs, that health and safety costs actually increases productivity and improves efficiency. So actually, you get a return on your investment. So it's about persuading them as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so Fiona, as part of the IOSH Future Leaders Group, we were just talking about sort of younger workers. From your experience of being a woman in occupational safety and health, what advice would you give to others looking to start or progress their careers in health and safety?
I think just get stuck in.
Yeah.
Really get stuck into what you want to do. The workers that you're there to support, get to know them. That's certainly been my biggest takeaway from the lockdowns and COVID, is actually get to know the workforce, and you get a lot more out of them rather than just being the health and safety person. Knowing a bit about their personal life actually made a huge difference as to how I then communicate with them. Take every experience that comes your way. We all started out fresh, and I think that's one thing that when you're starting out you forget, that actually go and ask people, go and speak to people. We've all started at the beginning.
Yeah.
We all know how it was when we first started out. Make that connections and just reach out when you are stuck and have questions. We've probably all got the same stupid questions in our head.
Yeah, absolutely. And so kind of looking to the future, if you imagine health and safety, the occupational safety and health profession, say in 50 years' time, what skill sets do you think we're going to need?
I think technology is going to be
Yeah.
a huge part of it, in terms of how we're now taking in AI, looking at, the different platforms that we can use, not just PowerPoint. There's so many things out there.
The dreaded PowerPoints.
So many packages out there that we can use to get messages
Yeah.
across, rather than the old style that we used. So I think it's a very exciting time to be in the industry. And I don't think any of us have a golden ball of what is actually going to look like in 50 years, because I think the AI industry is going to be in the next 10 years, and
It's so unknown, isn't it? It's
it'll be
crazy.
something completely different in the next 50 years.
We've got robot dogs walking around here. So,
There is Spot the dog, I think.
yeah, he came on stage. I think he's on stage now, actually.
Oh, is he?
But it's incredible.
And there's a real eagle behind us as
Yeah,
well.
it threw me off on stage. I looked over and suddenly there was an eagle flapping, and I was like, sorry, just needed a second.
I thought it was fake at first, and as I moved closer, I realised he's very chilled out, though, I have to say. Okay, so Phillip, similar question to you, but how do you think the skill sets of the workforce need to change, and how do they need to adapt? And I guess, what do you think the recruitment sector will look like in 2074?
Yeah, I think if we look at recruitment, it's the same as everywhere. It's technology.
Yeah.
That any candidate or client that we work with, effectively with the use of technology, want everything done faster and cheaper. It's the world we live in, and I think that whilst there is elements that can be sped up through technology, I think the thing we look at AI, and there's a lot of AI tools that can support our industry in making us better at what we do. But the one thing that will never be removed from our sector is actually the personal approach, very similar to health and safety, is technology can take you away, but actually you need that personal touch, because until we move away from, for example, say human error, if technology came in, that would remove human error, and you could say that's fine, but actually there's the human element that actually people crave and want in the workforce. So I think that whilst recruitment is, we look at AI, you look at communication, how AI you can create, and I was talking to a health and safety professional a couple of months ago, and they typed in on an AI, can you do a risk assessment for a certain industry? And they put it in, and it came up with a 12-page document, and they reviewed it, and they said, this is actually very good. But you need that human element to review the work. And I think that whilst it can speed up elements, a lot of what we do in our sector can't be replaced by AI. So we meet our candidates, we meet our clients, we engage to understand, because I would say 90% of within the health and safety industry, you mentioned it about, it's getting out, it's meeting people, it's asking those questions. You can't do that from behind a desk, and AI can't do that. So I think for the time being, we're okay.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, the human life, it's pretty personal, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And if we're protecting workers' lives, then you do need that human touch, don't you? And like you were saying earlier, Phil, if you're trying to sell yourself as a company and attract candidates, if you go completely down the technology route and everything's AI, risk assessments are AI, and you don't need that human touch, ultimately, will you necessarily attract the leading talent?
It becomes very much what health and safety has moved away from, and it becomes a tick box.
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
That, do you have this, and this? No, you aren't the right person. Whereas actually in health and safety, when we work with our clients and candidates, is what's not on paper is more important. It's how you approach it. And health and safety, like Fiona, you won't be able to call upon every legislation that's out there, but you can find it and you know how to apply it. And that's actually the most important thing from my perspective is how you apply your knowledge in all sectors. And I think when we find people who know every single bit of legislation, people are turned off because they're very tick box, rule focused. No, you didn't comply with that. It's like, well, actually it's asking the questions to why. So I think that, I think people want that personal element, but it's definitely how technology can improve what we do and speed up the process. I think it's here to stay, and we need to look at how we can improve from our side. But especially in this industry, I can't see us being replaced for a long time.
Yeah, we need to embrace it to complement what we already do.
Don't be afraid of change. And if you're afraid of change, ultimately there are some good things out there. Like 10 years ago, LinkedIn was barely used. Now it's the number one tool. So everyone's now started to build profiles. So I think it's here to stay.
Have you found that a sort of barrier for what you do, or something that's
LinkedIn?
Helped?
Helped massively. Yeah, you think that previously people who wanted positions would have to upload their CV to either a job advert or a CV library type. Others are available, of course. But now people can just create a profile and be found. And that's what we've seen a massive change, is that people, and when I say it's bouncing back, is that when I talk to my clients over the last 18 months, is that candidates aren't actively applying. Because of LinkedIn, they are now being actively approached. So you don't need to, all you need to do is flick your status to I'm now open to work, and suddenly you're approached. So you don't need to actually go through all the steps that you previously did to be approached about positions.
But isn't that bad for business for you?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, because all the tools that we use have always been available to every single business. But what our industry does is it saves time, which actually is money. That realistically, there's internal recruitment teams, and I've got a friend in internal recruitment, and they'll work 95 positions at one time, whereas we'll specialise on 5 to 6 with a client and go out to market, speak to 180 people and narrow it down to the best 3. So I think if you look at the process behind it, is that, if we feared the technology that other people can use, I think that, the whole industry would go. But actually it's about the value we bring to the timing aspect. That, like, for example, everyone can do every single job in the world, but if one person's doing it, they're not going to be able to do it effectively. And that's where you go to a specialist that says, actually, like if I want my toilet fixed, I go to a plumber. I don't ask a builder. So it's looking at really that specialism, what someone can add that actually it'll come at a cost, yes, but are you going to be able to do it as good?
As effectively,
If you do it yourself, you might have to do it twice. And I think, again, that's where we embrace technology, is that it does it make it easier? Well, 96% of people now find their next position through LinkedIn.
Is it that high?
It's that high at the moment, and that's all sectors currently. So it is the number one tool. So I think we use it for our advantage. But I think where our real advantage comes in is the bits outside of just finding a CV.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that whole meeting. It's checking that people are the right fit without being biased and saying tick box. It's actually you bring this and offering outside the box options.
So you mentioned that today you've launched a new report on the market insights.
Yeah, so Shirley Parsons, every year we release our market insights report. It's gone out a month later than usual. It usually goes out beginning of March. It's come out now because actually what we've done this year is we've made it bigger and better than previous years. So every year we talk about work aspirations, salary, culture, job satisfaction, etc. And this year we've gone into a lot more detail. So rather than just talk about what's the average salary in the market, we've broken that down and going, well, what does that mean for sector, location, all of the above? There's gender pay gap in there across industry. So it's that real detail that I think the thing with data is what people can be guilty of is that they look at an overall picture and make a judgment and say, oh, that's what the market's doing. But actually what our data allows you to do is to go, oh, I work in construction in the Northwest. What does that mean to me? So it's a real personalised approach to the report. So that went live today, 40-page report that just goes into real in-depth knowledge of what's going on in the market through health and safety professionals.
As I've given you a plug, I'm now going to have a plug, if that's all right, as digital editor of IOSH magazine, because we've also just done a salary survey of IOSH members. So we ran it December, January, salary survey of about 3,000 OSH practitioners. And this was a question I wanted to put to both of you, actually. The figures do, so we are talking about salaries, but the figures do suggest that it pays to be a member of a professional body. So members of IOSH earned considerably more than those that weren't members of a professional body. According to that sample, those who aren't a member get paid a fifth less than their counterparts, which is quite considerable. What are your thoughts on this?
I think when I first read about it, quite surprised, but when you actually sit and digest it, it's not that surprising, because from professional bodies you get that support, but you also get the connection network and the training side as well. So there is a massive positive for being with a professional body.
Yeah.
And are you seeing that in recruitment?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that if you look at what IOSH offers you, I think it's definitely beneficial. I would say that companies look more for qualification, but IOSH obviously offers that network to further grow yourself as an individual. So, obviously I read the data as well, and it would suggest that having a membership does pay. I think that, I think it's just for IOSH to continue showing the value in which it brings, because I know that there's been years, and there's still professionals that either buy into it or don't, and ask, what do I get from that? So I think it's looking at how, and as I said on the stage, is that everyone's looking for growth and progression. And I think that's the key thing with the market changing, because I think that with the cost element and all of those, is there really needs to be that proof as what do I get from it as well. And I think looking at the generation that are coming towards the end of their career that have grown up with IOSH, I think it's looking at how it can continue to relate to the modern newer generation for the progression part. And I think that support network is really key to that.
Absolutely. And you were just mentioning about your session on stage. So you both took part in this panel session in the Keynote Theatre, which is sponsored by IOSH, on the shifting paradigm of work. What do you think, and what do you hope people watching took away from your session?
I think that it's now an individual approach to both managing OSH in the workplace and as Phil's spoken about, in recruiting as well. Then it's all about communication, collaboration, and actually getting down to the crux of it, is asking, what is in it for me?
Yeah, one of the things that we mentioned on stage is that the world we live in now, everything is customized. So you look at your phone, case, everything that you have in life is customized to your approach. So actually it's looking at the data. Obviously IOSH have got theirs, we've got ours, and bringing that all together and saying that's a wide view, but actually what might be seen as not very important to the majority could be very important to an individual. And I think it's that individual approach. And there was a question about how does an individual approach affect culture? And I think that we spoke about, actually culture is set by individuals, is that it takes one poor part of culture to spread. It's infectious, and actually looking at making everyone feel like they're part of it. So yeah, I think that was what we spoke about, is the main takeaway was an individual approach to a shifting workforce, because some motivations aren't going to be the same for others.
That seems like a really, really good note to end our discussion on. Thank you both so much for coming into the booth today. It was great to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Thanks for listening. Join us next week for more Trailblazer talks from the IOSH podcast.